Hey guys, tonight we are going to lace up some metaphorical sandals and plunge, at an extremely modest jogging pace, into the vast, dusty world of Persian couriers. You are standing on the edge of a road that stretches far beyond the line where the sky kisses the horizon. It isn't just any road. This is the royal road of the Persian Empire, a marvel of ancient logistics that crisscrosses a domain so large, your feet start aching just looking at a map. You probably won't survive this job, not unless you have calves carved from marble and lungs like goatskin bellows. But no pressure. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I always love knowing where my listeners are tuning in from, so feel free to drop your location and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The year is, well, let's call it 485 BCE, though your sand-choked brain has long since stopped caring about precise numbers. You stand alone, or so it feels, upon a road made of carefully laid stone and crushed gravel. Beneath your worn sandals, the surface is as hard as the Empire's laws and nearly as unforgiving to tired arches. This is the King's Road, the artery of the Achaemenid Empire, built not just to move soldiers and silk, but messages. Messages carried on tired, calloused feet like yours. The sun beats down, uninvited and relentless. The land stretches in all directions, painted in shades of dust, rock, and the occasional stubborn patch of greenery clinging to the margins of a shallow stream. Somewhere out there, maybe over that jagged ridge, is a satrapy, one of the many semi-independent provinces ruled in the king's name. And between those satraps and the royal court in Persepolis or Susa stands you. Historians still argue whether these roads were truly as miraculous as ancient writers claimed, or if scribes with vivid imaginations and generous sponsors exaggerated their wonders. Some say the royal road could carry a message over 1,600 miles in 7 days. Others scoff and insist even the fastest foot courier would struggle to make it in twice that time. But you don't argue. You just start walking or running or hobbling depending on the day. The road is wide enough for a small army, though today you share it only with a few wandering goats and the occasional merchant cart creaking its way toward some distant market town. You pass stone markers counting the parasangs, roughly 4 miles per marker, though no one agrees on the exact length. It hardly matters. You measure your world not in numbers but in the aches of your calves, the blisters on your heels, and the ever-thirsty stretch of skin at the back of your neck. At regular intervals, some more regular than others depending on whose job it was to maintain them, you pass way stations known as Chapar Khane. These are your lifelines. Cool, shaded courtyards where you can swap satchels, snatch a gulp of water, or collapse for a precious hour's sleep while another runner takes the scroll onward. These relay stations are supposed to be evenly spaced, but you suspect the architects never bothered to check the routes themselves. Some stretches feel endless, others crammed too close together like rival cousins at a royal feast. Even the emperor, Great Darius, or perhaps his successor Xerxes, would never sully his sandals upon these roads personally. That's what you're for. Messages don't wait for you to stretch or complain. The satchel slung over your shoulder today contains an assortment of imperial orders, tax decrees, and, if the rumors you heard at the last relay post are true, a strongly worded letter about figs. Yes, figs. Apparently, the satrap of Sardis sent a shipment of underripe figs to the court, and the Queen Mother is furious. Your mission? Ensure the fig-related reprimand arrives before the satrap's next dinner party. Empires, you reflect with a sigh, are built on such towering urgencies. A vulture glides overhead, casting a lazy shadow over your path. You offer it, sarcastic nod as if to say, "Not today, friend. You'll have to wait for someone slower, but the joke's on you. You'll probably trip on a loose stone later and give the bird its feast after all." You wipe sweat from your brow, already gritty from the endless layers of road dust, and continue onward. This is your world now. A realm of endless gravel paths, fading landmarks, and the rhythmic slap of sandals against stone. At night, when the stars finally blink open across the Persian sky, you sometimes wonder what it would be like to live in one of those grand palaces you hear about. Cool stone floors, silk cushions, bowls of dates and almonds served on gold plates. But then you remember that those pampered courtiers still rely on you to tell them what's happening in the outer provinces. Without you, they'd be as blind and deaf as desert lizards hiding. 'Neath rocks. It's a small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. So you adjust your satchel, squint against the shimmering heat haze, and march on. Because no matter how big the empire grows, or how grand the king's titles become, someone has to carry the messages, and that someone is you, always you. You didn't choose this life exactly. Few do. Most couriers like yourself were recruited, some might say conscripted, from villages dotting the empire's fringes. A scout arrives, sizes up the local youths, and before you can say, "But I'm terrible at running," you're holding a battered pair of state-issued sandals and a solemn-looking scroll of regulations. The sandals, incidentally, are about as comfortable as strapping tree bark to your feet. There's a reason the old joke among couriers is that the king's roads are smoother than the king's shoes. Your initiation into the courier ranks was not marked with parades or golden coins. No, your first task was to sprint 20 parasangs, carrying a message of negligible urgency, something about a tax collector's birthday party, and return by sunrise. You made it barely, legs wobbling like a newborn goat, so you promptly threw up behind a fig tree, but you made it. Now you are one of the king's trusted feet, part of the Angarum, that elite corps of message carriers who connect satrapies, generals, and the royal household itself. It's not glamorous. Your uniform, a simple linen tunic dyed in the empire's dullest approved shades, marks you as essential but invisible. You joke among your fellow couriers that you are the empire's second favorite servant. First is always the cook, naturally. Your days blend together like oil in water. A relay here, a message there. Some days you carry letters of life and death, troop movements, orders for grain to feed garrisons, news of rebellions, or worse, rumors of rebellions. Other days you sprint breathlessly to deliver the queen's complaints about the court's garden arrangements. But you don't ask questions. That's one of the first rules of being a courier. Don't ask, don't read, don't speculate. Historians still debate how strictly these rules were enforced. Some insist Persian couriers were models of discretion, never daring to peek at the wax-sealed tablets they carried. Others whisper that more than a few messages were read by firelight in the solitude of the road, curiosity gnawing stronger than loyalty. You're not saying which kind you are, but you do know that opening the wrong scroll could have consequences, as unpleasant as a scorpion in your sandal. As you trudge along, your body adopts the rhythm of the road. Step, step, breath. Step, step, breath. The endless horizon plays tricks on your mind. Some days you swear the road curves into itself, looping forever like a snake devouring its tail. That would explain why you sometimes pass the same goat twice in one day. Or maybe it's a very fast goat. You'll never know. At the next way station, a low mud brick structure fringed by wilting olive trees, you swap your satchel for a fresh one without ceremony. The keeper of the post, a man with eyebrows like scrub, brushes, hands you a new pouch and a bowl of thin lentil stew that tastes vaguely of dust and old socks. You eat it anyway. Because the only thing worse than running on an empty stomach is running while haunted by the smell of lentils. Once you asked a grizzled senior courier, who claimed he'd run the entire empire twice, what his secret was. Sand in the shoes, he told you deadpan, keeps the feet awake. You're still not sure if he was joking. But you tried it once, you still have regrets. The sun dips lower, smearing the sky in hues of burnt ochre and violet. The road begins to empty, as merchants and travelers hurry to find shelter before the jackals start howling. But not you. Couriers are exempt from fear, or so the story goes. You suspect it's more about stubbornness than bravery. You wrap a threadbare scarf around your head to keep the desert's evening breath from stinging your ears. The scarf, faded and patched, belonged to your mother. She gave it to you when you left your village, reminding you not to lose your head or your lunch on the king's business. So far, you've only lost the latter. Your thoughts wander, as they always do when the miles stretch long and your feet go on autopilot. You imagine the king himself, lounging on a jewel-encrusted throne, sipping sweet wine while you cough up sand on his behalf. Maybe he thinks about you sometimes. Probably not. But you can dream. Another parasong marker looms in the gathering dusk. You slap it lightly as you pass, a habit all couriers develop. Some say it brings good luck. Others say it's just to prove you're still awake. Both seem plausible. A wind stirs, carrying the scent of distant smoke. Perhaps a village celebrating some festival you're too weary to remember. You envy them, dancing under lanterns while you slog ever onward. But you also pity them, locked in their tiny worlds while you roam the empire's vast, sprawling veins. A courier's curse, always in motion, never arriving. You sigh, shift your satchel, and push forward. Because the road never ends, and neither do you. You reach the next relay station under a swollen moon, silver light spilling like milk over the worn stones of the outpost courtyard. These are the quiet places, sleepy dots on the map where couriers swap satchels, scratch notes into dusty ledgers, and occasionally share a joke that's only funny if your legs have been running for 10 straight hours. Tonight's station master is an old man who smells faintly of boiled onions and has the permanent squint of someone who's spent decades peering down roads that never end. He barely glances up from his wax tablet as you approach, shoving a fresh satchel at you and muttering something about sandstorms coming in from the east. You don't bother asking how he knows. Station masters always know. This outpost, like the others along the Royal Road, is a thread in the great imperial relay system. Some historians still marvel at its precision, claiming the Persians invented the first true postal network, predating Rome's famed cursus publicus by centuries. Others argue the Assyrians had something similar, though less romanticized. But no one can deny the system's genius. Couriers like you didn't carry messages all the way from one end of the empire to the other. No, you sprinted segments, passing satchels like runners in a relay race. The empire's pulse never skipped a beat, its orders flowing from Susa to Sardis in an unbroken chain of tired legs and sore feet. It's elegant, efficient, and absolutely exhausting. At this station, like every station, there's a wall of gossip, scrawled in hurried cuneiform or inkbrush letters, messages between couriers, mostly warnings about tricky routes, grumpy satraps, or which station masters water down the wine more than usual. You scan the wall while gulping down a ladle of thin beer, and your eye catches a fresh note. Beware the bandits near Arbella. Again. Again. Indeed. Seems the local brigands can't resist the temptation of satchels that might, once in a while, carry more than tax decrees and fig complaints. Historians still debate how often these courier satchels actually held valuables. Some romanticize them as treasure chests of political secrets and glittering jewels. Others point out that most messages were deadly dull, land disputes, shipment schedules, and the occasional poem written by a lonely bureaucrat with more ink than charm. You suspect the truth lies somewhere in between. Tonight, your satchel feels disappointingly light. Probably more letters about figs. Or worse, fig shortages. You step into the designated sleeping hut, little more than a mat on hard-packed earth, and collapse face first. For an hour, you sleep the deep, dreamless sleep of someone whose body has temporarily given up on caring about the outside world. But the road calls. Always the road. You wake, groggy and sore, swap your now empty satchel for the next, and set off again into the ink-black night. The moon hangs heavy above, your only companion as the relay posts fade behind you. The road ahead stretches endlessly, a pale ribbon in the darkness. You find comfort in the rhythm of it. Footsteps, breaths, the occasional curse when a loose stone attempts to assassinate your ankle. In these hours, the courier system becomes something more than a job. It's a living creature, a heartbeat you keep alive with your aching feet and stubborn will. You are one part of a greater whole, a messenger in an endless chain, linking kings to generals, satraps to scribes, lovers to the objects of their poorly written affections. You remember once delivering a scroll sealed with 7 layers of wax, only to find it contained a recipe for pickled onions. You never looked at pickled onions the same after that. As you run, your mind drifts. You wonder if the king ever thinks about the invisible couriers beneath his polished throne room floors. Probably not. To him, the messages simply arrive, as if by magic. But you know better. You know it's sweat and dust, sore calves and blistered toes that keep the empire humming. And still, you keep going, because no matter how heavy the satchel, how lonely the road, you are part of something vast and unending. You're a courier, and the road is home. The desert dawn creeps up on you like a shy servant, quiet at first, then suddenly spilling over the horizon in gold and amber. You've run through the worst of the night, that sliver of time when your body fights sleep and your mind wrestles. Strange thoughts like, what if the king's horses envy couriers? You chuckle softly at your own nonsense, but in truth, you're not far off. Horses may carry the privileged, but couriers? Couriers carry the empire itself. At least that's what you tell yourself when your feet ache so badly you want to throw the satchel into the nearest well. This stretch of road is known among your comrades as the dry teeth. Mile after grueling mile of cracked earth, skeletal shrubs, and little else. Even the jackals seem to avoid it. Though some couriers claim the ghosts of lost runners prowl here, still clutching their satchels in skeletal fingers. Historians still argue whether these tales of haunted roads have any basis in fact, or if they were simply invented to haze new recruits. You suspect both might be true. The markers here are few and far between, crumbling stone pillars chipped by centuries of wind. You slap one in passing, whispering a half-hearted blessing under your breath. Not because you're superstitious, but because why risk it? The gods of the road are fickle, and your life depends on their whims more than you'd care to admit. And yet, as the sun crests fully, painting the desert in hues of molten copper, you feel something close to peace. It's quiet out here. No market cries. No bickering nobles, just you, the road, and the rhythmic thump of your own heart. You pass a caravan camped off the road, their camels kneeling like grumpy old men in the sand. The merchants eye you with a mix of curiosity and pity, offering a wave and a water skin. You wave back, accepting the water gratefully. It tastes like leather and dust, but it's wet, and that's all that matters. One of the merchants, an older woman with hair braided into a crown of salt and pepper, calls out a joke about you looking skinnier than her camels. You fire back a quip about camels having better unions. They laugh, but there's a knowing edge to it. Everyone respects the couriers, but no one envies them. You trudge onward, your feet sinking into patches of soft sand that threaten to swallow. Your ankles whole. This is where the road shows its teeth, hiding pitfalls beneath deceptively smooth surfaces. You know the trick, though. Keep light on your feet. Lean forward just enough, never panic. Your sandals, worn to the point of flapping, slap the ground in protest. You make a mental note to request a new pair at the next station. You know they'll look at you like you just asked for a throne of lapis lazuli, but it's worth a try. You cross paths with another courier headed the opposite direction. You exchange nods, the briefest flicker of camaraderie passing between you. There's an unwritten code. Couriers don't gossip about their routes, but they do share glances that say, yeah, this stretch sucks. He mouths a warning. Flies ahead. You groan. Because of course the next leg runs past a village famed not for its olives or poetry, but for its swarms of horseflies. Some say they're the size of apricots. You suspect that's an exaggeration. You also suspect you're about to find out. The first fly hits your cheek like a tiny angry fist. You wave it away, only to be ambushed by its 10 closest relatives. It's like running through a cloud of tiny biting spears. You cover your face with your scarf, gritting your teeth as the swarm buzzes around your ears like an orchestra of annoyance. Historians still debate whether Persian couriers developed specific techniques to outrun swarms, or if they simply suffered in silence. Based on your current predicament, you lean toward the latter. You sprint harder, cursing the flies, the king, the inventor of roads, and especially the village elders who claim the flies are sacred messengers of some forgotten deity. Sacred or not, you vow to squash a few next chance you get. Finally, the swarm thins as you crest a low hill. You pause, gulping in the cleaner air, sweat trickling into your eyes. The village is behind you, a blur of whitewashed mud walls and goat pens. Ahead, the road smooths into a more forgiving stretch, flanked by tamarisk trees whose feathery leaves whisper in the breeze like lazy gossipers. You allow yourself a moment to lean against a tree trunk, pressing your forehead to the cool bark. In the distance, you spot the next relay station. Its squat shape as welcome as an oasis. You tell yourself you'll rest properly there, even if only for the length of one bowl of barley gruel and a catnap on a straw mat that smells of 1,000 couriers before you. Because out here, small comforts mean everything. You adjust your satchel, flex your sore ankles, and set off once more. The road never cares about your blisters, but you care enough for both of you. The relay station emerges slowly from the shimmering haze, its mud brick walls glowing pale gold under the midday sun. You feel the pull of it deep in your bones, like a sailor glimpsing port after a squall. Every station is a brief, borrowed haven. Food, rest, maybe a scrap of gossip before the road reclaims you. This station, known among couriers as Sleepy Tamarisk, is manned by a lanky scribe with ink stains on his fingers and a look in his eyes that suggests he once aspired to write royal decrees but now spends his days tallying satchels and squinting at the horizon. You hand him your cargo, and he takes it with exaggerated ceremony, inspecting the seals and mumbling about the correct order of satrapic markings. Historians still bicker over whether the Persians truly used wax seals as often as popular imagination suggests, or if much of that is a later romantic flourish. From where you stand, sweat dripping onto the station's cracked threshold, you can confirm there's plenty of wax, and even more arguing about how to handle it. You accept a bowl of thin stew and a hunk of bread harder than limestone. The cook, a wiry woman with eyebrows like thunderclouds, watches you chew with mild amusement. "You couriers chew louder than camels," she says, tossing you a fig. "Eat that instead, or you'll grind your teeth to dust." You nod, grateful for the sweetness. It sticks to your teeth like honeyed glue. But you can almost pretend you're feasting in the satrap's banquet hall, minus the dancers, perfumed servants, and silk cushions. As you eat, the station master shares the latest grumbling from the capital. The king, it seems, is planning yet another tour of the provinces, which means more orders, more scrolls, more tired couriers. And they say he travels with an entire forest's worth of shade tents, the scribe adds with a smirk. Must be nice to never see the sun unless it's filtered through 20 layers of purple silk. You nod politely, though you know the king's movements have little to do with your own dusty path. Your world is the road, not the throne room. Once, your belly is marginally less empty. You lie back on the station's shaded bench, letting your eyes flutter shut. The distant hum of cicadas and the creak of the tamarisk branches above lull you towards sleep. But sleep is a cruel flirt here, always offering just enough to tease, never enough to satisfy. The next leg will take you into hill country. The terrain shifts there, the road winding like a drunk poet's script, the air cooler, the dangers different. Bandits. You've heard the stories. Courier pouches emptied, runners left bound in ditches. There's a popular rumor that a bandit chieftain named Rusgar used to be a courier himself and only robs satchels to read the love poems scribes smuggle between cities. Historians still argue whether Rusgar ever existed or if he's just the product of courier campfire tales. You're fairly certain anyone robbing you will care more about coins than bad poetry. Still, the thought lingers like a splinter in your mind as you swap satchels once more, check your sandals' frayed laces, and prepare to climb into the high country. Before you go, the cook tosses you another fig. "For luck," she says, "or for the flies." You smile, tucking it into your pouch. You'll save it for when the hills get steep, and your legs forget how to feel like they belong to you. The road beckons, sloping upward into shadows cast by craggy ridges. You feel the familiar tug in your calves, the tightening in your chest. As the air thins slightly, you trudge on. Every courier knows this truth: the road changes you. It carves new muscles, calluses your feet, but it also shapes your mind. You start thinking in distances instead of hours, in satchels instead of letters, in the steady heartbeat of your own pace instead of the tangled chaos of the cities you pass through. You catch sight of an old milestone half buried in scrub, its script worn to near oblivion. It probably once boasted the king's name and the distance to Susa. Now it's just another rock. You touch it anyway, out here, even forgotten. Things deserve a nod. A herd of goats blocks the road ahead, their bells clanging like drunken cymbals. You sidestep them carefully, exchanging a nod with the herder, a boy not much older than your youngest brother. He grins toothlessly, offering you a strip of dried cheese. You decline politely. There are some things even a starving courier won't. Psst. The climb sharpens, and with it the scenery turns lush in a scraggly, stubborn way. Wild fig trees cling to cliffs like gossiping old women, and you spot the faint flash of kingfishers darting between creeks. You take a long swig from your water skin, savoring the rare taste of clear, cold water. Up here, streams trickle even in the dry months, though they say the spirits of old kings haunt them, murmuring forgotten edicts into the reeds. Historians still bicker over whether these tales of royal hauntings are a form of folk memory or simply the product of too many lonely travelers listening to the wind. Either way, you keep your steps light, your gaze sharp. The station master warned you about these hills. Bandits or not, it's easy to turn an ankle here, or worse, lose your footing entirely on the gravel-strewn bends. But you've run these paths before. You trust your legs. Mostly, you push onward, the road unfurling ahead like a parchment scroll written by the gods themselves. The hills cradle you now, steep slopes folding in on either side like the arms of an old friend who doesn't remember your name but hugs you anyway. You're no longer in the flat, predictable stretches of desert road. Here, every bend hides a new surprise, sometimes a shepherd's hut, sometimes a snake sunning itself on the warm stones, and sometimes, yes, the less welcome surprise of armed strangers pretending to be trees. You've heard from older couriers that these hills have been both a refuge and a trap for generations. The same winding paths that help you escape the worst heat also give cover to men and women with less noble reasons to be out here. Your feet know the rhythm of these switchbacks almost too well. You adjust your pace to the incline, breathing deeper, letting the cool mountain air fill your lungs and sweep away the taste of dust and fig pulp still stuck in your teeth. Around the next bend, you spot a shrine, small, crumbling, its once vivid tiles faded to the color of old parchment. A statue of Ahura Mazda leans at an awkward angle, as though the god himself got bored of standing straight after centuries of neglect. You offer the usual gesture of respect, mostly because, as every courier knows, the gods of the hills are the far pettiest of all. Leave them unacknowledged, and you'll find yourself tripping over stones that weren't there a moment ago, or losing your satchel to a sudden landslide. Historians still debate whether these shrines served actual religious functions for travelers or if they were merely decorated pit stops for bored nobles. Either way, you welcome the excuse to pause, wipe the sweat from your brow, and stretch your cramped calves. From your vantage point, you see the road unravel like a long, lazy snake into the valley below, dotted with almond groves and tiny villages that cling to the hillsides like barnacles on a whale. You imagine the people down there going about their slow, predictable days, oblivious to the fact that the Empire's messages pulse past them on tired legs like yours. You snack on the fig the station cook gave you. It's warm now, sticky, and somehow even sweeter after the climb. You let the juice dribble down your chin because who's going to judge you out here? The lizards? You roll your shoulders listening to them crack like old wagon wheels and get moving again. The road narrows, pinched between cliffs where boulders lean precariously, daring gravity to make a move. You stay close to the inner wall, remembering a courier from Ecbatana who once lost his entire pouch and half a toe. on this very stretch. There's a legend among your peers about the Hill of Whispering Stones, where the wind carries secrets, up from the valleys. They say if you sit quietly and press your ear to the earth, you'll hear the voices of ancient kings arguing over whose beard oil was superior. You've never dared to test that one, not because you're afraid of ghosts, but because you're afraid you might actually hear them. And let's face it, you barely have the mental bandwidth for your own internal monologue, let alone the bickering of long-dead royalty. You pass a group of charcoal burners, their faces streaked with soot, eyes narrowed with the suspicion of men who see too much and say too little. They don't greet you, but they don't block your path either. You keep your gaze forward, your pace steady, pretending you're just another part of the scenery. By now, the ache in your legs is more familiar than discomfort. It's a companion. You hum softly to yourself, an old courier tune that compares satchels to stubborn lovers and sandals to faithless friends. The wind picks up as the road climbs higher still, tugging at your scarf, whistling past your ears like a smug musician who knows you can't whistle back without swallowing a bug. You pause at a narrow outcropping known as the Eagle's Balcony. From here, the view stretches for miles, the empire sprawling below you like a worn tapestry. You can almost make out the shimmer of the next station's signal fire, a tiny flicker against the endless blue. It's moments like these that remind you why you endure the blisters, the flies, the endless teasing from merchants who assume couriers must have the world's smallest wardrobes. Because up here, above it all, you see the empire for what it truly is. 1,000 voices, 100 cities, all connected by roads that only the stubborn and the sleepless dare to run. Historians still argue whether the Persian postal system was truly as efficient as the ancients claimed, or if those glowing reports were more propaganda than precision. You have no doubt. It works, because you make it work. You shoulder your satchel once more, feeling the weight settle against your back like an old friend. You descend into the valley, the road softening into gravel, the air scented with pine and damp moss. The station is closer now. You can almost taste the lentil stew they'll have waiting, the watered wine, the scrape of a flea-ridden cot against your aching back. You pick up your pace, smiling grimly, almost there. But not quite. The road always has one more surprise waiting. The valley starts to narrow as you approach the next station, the craggy hills on either side slowly folding into rolling green fields. The air smells of wet earth, and you can hear the distant hum of a stream threading through the landscape, like a forgotten lullaby. It's strange how the road always seems to shift just when you think you've figured it out. The landscape morphs as though the earth itself is playing a game, constantly reshaping itself to test your resolve. One moment you're trudging through harsh, dry terrain, and the next, you're surrounded by the kind of beauty that would make a poet stop, take out his scroll, and try to capture the impossible. But couriers don't have time for poetry, not the kind with pretty words anyway. You pause for a moment, adjusting the strap of your satchel and letting your eyes drink in the green, an unexpected gift after the arid stretches behind you. But there's no time to linger in this fleeting paradise. The road always calls, even when you want nothing more than to sit by the stream and dip your feet into its cold waters. You're almost there. The station is close enough now that you can see the smoke rising from its cook fires, a comforting plume against the sky. As you draw nearer, the last of the rocky landscape smooths into an open, flat plain, where the pace of life seems slower, almost lazy. A few farmers stand knee-deep in the field, pulling up roots with slow deliberation, like they've forgotten the rush of the world beyond the hills. They glance at you, but only briefly. To them, you're just another courier passing through, an unremarkable blur in the rhythm of their day. And to be honest, you wouldn't have it any other way. You've heard that in some parts of the empire, couriers are treated as near royalty, hailed as heroes for their work, adored by the citizens. For their tireless service, that's not your experience. Out here, you're just a tired soul with a satchel full of messages and a mind full of road dust. Still, as you approach the station, a strange sense of relief washes over you. The sight of the station is like seeing the last bit of daylight before a storm. You know it's temporary, but it's enough to keep you going. The station is modest, nestled between two oaks that seem to have grown too tall for their surroundings. The familiar sound of voices and the clatter of tools greet you as you step inside, the scent of bread and broth filling the air. The station master, a stout man with a thick beard that hides most of his face, greets you with a nod, offering you a seat at the long wooden table where other couriers are already resting, half-heartedly gnawing on their rations. You take your place among them, leaning back in your chair with a soft groan as you stretch your aching limbs. The relief is momentary, but it's enough to keep you from collapsing entirely. You're not the first to arrive, the station master says with a wry grin. Another group came through hours ago. If you hurry, you might still catch some of the stew. You nod, already knowing you'll take the stew, even if it's cold by now. There's a small bowl of figs beside the pot, more than enough to make up for the travel. You swipe one, bite into it, and savor the sweet pulp, the slight dustiness, still clinging to it. It's a small thing, but it's a comfort. As the fire crackles and the sounds of the station bustle around you, you lose yourself in the quiet, in the soft rhythm of the place. Your mind drifts, almost against your will, and you think back to the long stretches of road you've covered to get here. The hours, the days, they blur together like the ripples on a pond, too many to count and too vast to measure. The conversation among the other couriers shifts, and you catch fragments of their stories. A man whose route had been blocked by a landslide, a woman who'd narrowly avoided an ambush, a young courier who had only just joined the ranks, still bright-eyed and eager yet to feel the full weight of the endless road. They speak with a familiarity that is as comfortable as it is unsettling. Each one of them is living a life that mirrors yours in so many ways, yet in so many others, it is uniquely their own. Historians still argue whether the couriers ever saw themselves as part of a greater network, or if they were just individuals, bound by the same grueling path. Some say it was camaraderie, some say necessity. Perhaps it's both. You chew your food slowly, listening to their voices, letting them wash over you. They're all different, but here, at the end of the road, they feel the same. There's a shared exhaustion, a shared understanding of what it means to move without rest, to carry the weight of 1,000 messages and 1,000 unspoken thoughts. You're back. The fire crackles again, snapping you out of your reverie. You lean forward, your tired eyes scanning the horizon visible from the open door. The road continues, you know that. But for now, you're allowed to rest, to take a moment to reflect. One of the younger couriers, a man with wide, hopeful eyes, asks if anyone wants to hear about his travels. There's an easy laugh around the table as the others wave him off, joking about how he'll regret his eagerness once the road catches up with him. He smiles sheepishly but presses on, his words flowing freely now as he recounts the places he's been, the people he's met, the oddities and the small wonders he's stumbled upon. You listen, but only half-heartedly. You've seen it all. Before, your eyes are too tired for wonder, too worn out for stories. The road is both your prison and your salvation, and in a way the beauty of it all lies in its unchanging consistency. Soon the conversation quiets, and you're left alone with your thoughts again. The fire is low now, the shadows in the station, growing longer as night falls. The fatigue pulls at you like a thick blanket, but you fight it. Not yet. For now, you rest. And tomorrow, the road will call you once more. Morning arrives before you're truly ready for it, like the soft pressing of fingers against your eyelids. It's a cruel kind of awakening, the kind where your body begs for just a few more minutes, a few more hours of peace. But the world outside doesn't care about your tired eyes, and neither does the road. The first light filters through the cracks in the wooden walls of the station, casting thin beams of gold across the floor. The others are already stirring, packing their satchels, muttering about their routes, about the weather, about the next steps. You stretch, slow and careful, trying not to disturb the knot in your back that's been forming since the first step of this journey. There's a quiet ritual here, among the couriers, an unspoken agreement to avoid discussing the harder truths until absolutely necessary. No one wants to dwell on the sore muscles or the dread of the road that waits just beyond the station's threshold. Instead, small talk fills the morning air, the quality of last night's stew, the number of flies that ruined the night's sleep, the occasional grumble about the smell of the hay. You pull your satchel from the corner and check the contents, each item just as it should be. A folded map, ink pots, dried bread, your trusty flask of water. Each piece a part of the machine that is the courier's world. You don't think about the vastness of the empire or the importance of the messages you carry. It's the small things that matter now. Keeping your feet dry, making sure your sandals are still in one piece, not losing your way on the endless twists of the road. As you step outside, the sun is just beginning to rise, stretching its fingers over the landscape like a lazy cat. The valley looks different in the morning light, warmer, less ominous. The cool of the night has melted into a gentle breeze, and the trees sway as though they're stretching too. The station master calls over his shoulder, offering a final word of advice. Keep to the old path today. The new one's a shortcut, but I wouldn't trust it. Too many landslides lately. You nod, thanking him for the reminder. There's no need to ask how he knows. Station masters know everything, even the things they're not supposed to. And so you start again, one foot after another. The road will feel the same, even if the land around you changes. You've grown accustomed to that steady rhythm, the pace of your steps matching the pulse of the empire, or maybe just your heartbeat. Every journey starts the same, but ends a little differently each time. The road is a strange thing. It offers moments of stunning beauty, like the wildflowers along the edges or the mist rolling over the fields. But it also humbles you, forcing you to acknowledge how small you are in the grand tapestry of this vast land. It's as if the Awais, Earth itself, is reminding you that while you carry messages from the Emperor, you're still just a traveler in the grand scheme of things. As you walk, your mind drifts to the path ahead. The next station is another long day away, the one after. That even farther. The days are endless, stretching far beyond the horizon like a thread that never ties itself in a neat knot. Historians often paint a romantic picture of the empire, the Persian roads like veins running through the land. But you know the truth. It's exhausting, tedious, and sometimes unbearably slow. The road twists again, leading you toward a small cluster of hills. The landscape ahead is a muted brown, dotted with sparse trees and the occasional shepherd's hut. In the distance, you spot a few other couriers, some of them familiar faces, others new ones, all of them going through the same motions, each in their own world of private fatigue. The sun climbs higher, and the day stretches out, slow and heavy, like the journey itself. You know that in another hour you'll pass by the place where a group of nomads set up camp, their brightly colored tents like splashes of paint on the otherwise neutral land. They won't say much to you. Nomads rarely do. They know the way of things. You're just passing through, and they've got their own rhythm to follow. The air is drier now, more arid, as you enter a stretch of road that's all dust and rock. You cover your mouth with a cloth, keeping the worst of the dust out of your lungs, but it doesn't do much to stop the oppressive heat from sinking into your bones. The sweat collects in the small of your back, dripping down your legs in a steady stream. But you keep going. You're not alone. The footprints of previous travelers stretch in front of you, crisscrossing the dirt like the veins of some ancient map. You find yourself following them instinctively, not needing to glance at your own path to know where it leads. This is what it means to be a courier, to lose yourself in the rhythm of the road, to follow its twists and turns as though it's a part of you, as though you've always been walking this same path. At times like this, when the sun is high and the heat threatens to drain your very spirit, you remember why you carry the messages. You remind yourself that there's a purpose to this, even if it feels distant, even if the journey seems endless. Those messages you carry are the blood that courses through the Empire's veins. They're the lifeblood that keeps it moving forward, keeps it connected, even when the road seems to go on forever. Historians still argue whether the Persian couriers understood the significance of their work, whether they saw themselves as part of something grander or simply as men and women getting from one place to the next. Maybe it's a bit of both, but for you, right now, it doesn't matter. You walk because that's what you do. The road ahead stretches like a never-ending line, but you're not in a hurry anymore. You've found your rhythm, and with it, a kind of peace. The hills on the horizon blur in the heat, but they're familiar, like the curve of an old friend's smile. The wind picks up as you ascend the next ridge, bringing with it the mingled sense of sage and something richer, perhaps the faint smoke of a distant cook fire. You know that beyond this hill lies a plateau where travelers sometimes camp, and the thought of that open space calls to you like a whispered promise of relief. Your feet crunch on loose stones as you climb, your calves protesting, your breath coming in slow, deliberate pulls. This section of the road is infamous among couriers. The elders call it the Hill of Sighs, not because it's the tallest or the most treacherous, but because of its deceptive incline, a steady, soul-sapping ascent that tricks the body into believing it's harder than it is. And there, right, you find yourself sighing over and over, as if each exhale might lighten the invisible burden on your shoulders. At the crest, you pause to catch your breath and glance back. The world unfurls beneath you, winding rivers, patchwork fields, and the thin thread of the road weaving through it all like the hem of some frayed cloak. For a moment you let yourself admire the empire you serve, not as a courier, not as a subject, but as a lone traveler in awe of the immensity of it all. There's an odd sense of comfort in knowing you're just a speck against this sprawling canvas. You might carry important messages, but the earth spins on whether or not you deliver them. The birds still sing, the rivers still carve their paths through the valleys, and the road, always the road, continues stretching into forever. Your stomach grumbles, snapping you back to reality. You haven't eaten since the figs at the last station, and your pack feels painfully light. You rummage through it, fishing out a chunk of dry bread, harder than you remembered. As you chew, your mind wanders to the next station rumored to serve stewed goat, a rare treat on these barren stretches. Of course, rumors among couriers have a way of swelling like overripe melons, and it wouldn't be the first time you've arrived somewhere only to be served watery gruel and a shrug. As you descend into the plateau, the ground softens beneath your feet, and the tension in your legs eases just slightly. The landscape here is dotted with shallow ponds and lonely cypress trees. You pass an old milestone stone, half buried and leaning at an awkward angle. The inscription is worn to near oblivion, but you trace your fingers over it anyway. The grooves faint, but still there, like whispers from those who passed this way centuries before you. Some say these stones are haunted by the spirits of ancient couriers, doomed to walk the same paths for eternity. You chuckle softly. If that's true, they're probably laughing at you from the other side, amused by your aching knees and dusty boots. You spot the remains of a caravan camp just off the road, circles of ash where fires once burned, scraps of cloth caught in the brambles. There's a stillness here, an emptiness that wraps around you like a thick blanket. It's easy to imagine the camp as it was, merchants haggling over silk and spices, soldiers polishing their armor, children chasing each other between the tents. But now, all that remains are shadows. The wind sighs through the cypress branches, almost as if it too misses the days when this place hummed with life. You cross the plateau at a steady pace, the sun climbing to its merciless zenith overhead. The heat presses against you like an invisible weight, and you adjust your headscarf, pulling it lower to shield your face. It's in these quiet, punishing stretches that the mind starts to play tricks. Every rock becomes a potential snake, every rustle in the grass a lurking bandit. But mostly, it's just you, your footsteps, and the long, empty road. Occasionally, you pass other travelers, merchants leading stubborn camels, priests in faded robes, musicians with flutes slung over their backs. You nod politely, exchanging few words. There's an understanding among travelers out here. Conserve your breath. Save your stories for the comfort of the next station. Out here, words feel heavier than your satchel. As the day wears on, you find yourself reflecting on the peculiar debates that swirl around this section of the empire. Historians still argue whether these plateaus served as unofficial meeting grounds for various peoples of the empire or were simply way stations of convenience. Some claim they were sacred, spaces where alliances were forged, while others insist they were nothing more than a pit stop on the endless road of commerce. Perhaps both are true. You imagine a world where rival tribes gathered here, breaking bread under the same stars, their arguments softened by the distance from their homelands. Or perhaps they simply camped, tired and hungry, with no energy left for old grudges. Your thoughts are interrupted by the sight of a rider approaching from the east. You squint, trying to make out the figure. It's rare to see someone traveling alone in these parts. The rider draws nearer, and you notice the distinctive sash tied to the horse's saddle. A courier like you, though judging by his disheveled appearance. He's been riding hard and fast. He slows as he reaches you, nodding in acknowledgement. "Bad stretch up ahead," he says, wiping sweat from his brow. "Flooded rivers. You'll need to detour west if you don't want wet boots for days." You grimace. The western detour adds hours, maybe a day to your route. But wet boots. You shudder at the memory of blisters blooming like angry flowers across your feet. You nod your thanks, exchanging a few pleasantries before the rider presses on, his horse kicking up little clouds of dust. As he disappears over the hill, you glance down, at your feet, already aching at the mere thought of that extra day. But you know better than to ignore warnings on the road. Pride gets couriers nowhere, except perhaps stuck in a muddy ravine. You adjust your path following the faint western trail that snakes through the plateau, a less traveled road worn thin by time and the reluctant steps of those like you who've been forced to take the long way around. And maybe that's what this life is, you muse. Always the long way around. Always a little harder than it should be. But as you trudge onward, you can't help but smile wryly. After all, you signed up for this. You trudge on, the road now flanked by wild sage and thorny shrubs. The land opens wider, the horizon stretching. So far it almost hurts to look at it. You're alone again, with only your thoughts and the steady rhythm of your boots on the earth. And somehow, in this moment, it feels exactly right. By mid-afternoon, the western detour reveals its own brand of punishment. The road here, if you can still call it that, is more a suggestion than a path, winding through hills of loose gravel that shift treacherously underfoot. Each step demands careful placement, or you risk twisting an ankle. A courier's nightmare more feared than the prospect of bandits. You curse the old river, swollen from unexpected rains somewhere in the mountains, silently swearing vengeance against the fickle moods of nature. But of course the river doesn't care. The empire doesn't care. Only the message in your pouch holds sway, and it's not going to walk itself to its destination. The landscape here feels different from the well-trodden routes of the Royal Road. Sparse, lonely, untouched by the Empire's usual grasp of control. Villages are few and far between, and those that remain seem wary of strangers. You spot them on the fringes of your vision, eyes peeking from slatted windows, shadows darting between goat pens. You've heard the rumors that these remote communities still cling to ancient traditions, ignoring the Empire's taxes, its decrees, its gods. You can't blame them, really. Out here, the Emperor is just a name spoken in distant capitals. His laws feel as distant as the stars. You remind yourself to keep your head down and your pace steady. As you crest another low ridge, a dry riverbed yawns open beneath you, its cracked earth revealing the stubbornness of life in the form of thorny acacias and tiny, defiant flowers. You pause to refill your flask from a trickling spring, grateful for the cold bite of the water against your parched throat. Small mercies. Nearby, a cluster of old stones forms a rough circle, half buried in sand. You've seen such markers before, but each time they stir something odd in you. An itch at the back of your mind, a vague memory of stories about forgotten gods, roadside shrines to forces older than the Empire itself. Historians still argue whether these circles were sacred meeting places, boundary markers, or simply the remains of settlements lost to time? Perhaps all of the above. The past rarely offers clean answers, only layers upon layers of dust and debate. You move on, but not before offering a quiet nod to the stones, because on roads like these, a little superstition never hurts. The detour leads you through a narrow gorge, its sandstone walls painted in streaks of red and gold, as though some ancient god tried their hand at finger painting. The air is cooler here, shadows clinging to the rocks like old lovers reluctant to let go. You savor the brief respite from the punishing sun. As you pass beneath a precarious overhang, you notice the faded remnants of a painted symbol, perhaps a warning, perhaps a blessing. You wish you knew which. Couriers have always been suspicious folk, and though you pride yourself on being above such fears, you find your steps quickening ever so slightly. Emerging from the gorge, the world opens wide again. You spot movement on the horizon, another courier, judging by the telltale gait and dust-caked tunic. You wave, and they wave back. A small gesture, but in this empty stretch it feels like a festival. The two of you cross paths at an old way station, long abandoned, its roof sagging like the weary back of an old mule. There's a well here, its stone walls cool to the touch, though the water tastes of minerals and something metallic you choose not to think about. The courier, a woman, older than you by a decade at least, leans against the well, wiping the sweat from her brow. "Thought I was the only fool on this path today?" she says with a grin that reveals a missing tooth. "Looks like there's always room for one more fool," you reply, matching her smile. You swap stories, comparing routes, grumbling about the swollen river, the detour, the cursed detour. She mentions an even longer route around the eastern cliffs, but shakes her head. "Only if you hate yourself," she jokes. As you part ways, she offers a parting gift, a strip of candied melon from her satchel. It's sticky, sweet, and almost painfully bright against your parched tongue. You savor it like it's a royal feast. Back on the road, the shadows stretch long and thin. The western route might have spared your boots the river's bite, but it's added at least a day's walk to your journey. You adjust your mental map accordingly, calculating the extra time, the supplies needed, the new stations you'll now have to rely on. As the sun dips lower, you spot a scattering of tents on a distant ridge, likely a merchant caravan settling for the night. The fires flicker against the deepening indigo of the sky, and you entertain the idea of joining them. But caution keeps your feet pointed forward. Not all caravans are friendly, and besides, the code of the courier is clear. Avoid entanglements. Keep moving. Still, the scent of roasted meat drifts on the breeze, taunting you. Your dinner tonight will be a sad mix of dried dates and stale bread, but you've learned to trick your taste buds into believing it's more. The first stars appear, faint and trembling. You know you should set up camp soon. Find a flat patch of ground before the darkness swallows everything. But something compels you to push on a little farther, maybe just to that next bend, or the one after that. Out here, you measure progress not by miles but by stubbornness. Finally, you concede, setting your pack down in a hollow between two hills. You collect dried twigs, coaxing a small fire to life, its orange glow painting the night in gentle warmth. The flames crackle, a soft, familiar lullaby. As you settle into your blanket, you find yourself gazing up at the stars, tracing patterns the Empire's astronomers would likely scoff at. But out here, under this vast sky, you make your own constellations. You remember a joke an old courier once told you. The road will never remember your name, but your blisters might. You chuckle softly, letting the day's aches melt into the stillness of the night, and tomorrow the road will be waiting. Dawn breaks over the ridges with a wash of pale gold, the kind of soft light that makes the hardships of the previous day feel like a distant, half-forgotten fever dream. Your joints crack as you rise, every muscle reminding you that, while you may serve the fastest communication network the world has yet seen, you are still at the mercy of your mortal body. Breakfast is as uninspiring as ever. Hard bread, a few remaining dates, and a mouthful of water that tastes of the leather flask. You chew slowly, methodically, as if prolonging the meager meal might somehow trick your stomach into thinking it's been well fed. The path ahead is clearer today. The detour merges back with a more beaten track, one known for being favored by tax collectors and grain merchants, groups infamous for their ability to complain about everything from road conditions to the price of donkey feed. You're comforted by the sight of old wagon ruts in the dirt, even if it means more company than you'd prefer. By mid-morning, you encounter a station, this one not much more than a cluster of mud brick huts and a lean-to shelter for camels. The attendant is a boy, barely old enough to be trusted with the key to the grain store. He yawns as you approach, handing over the station log with a lazy flick of his wrist. You sign in, knowing full well the ink will dry long before anyone from Susa or Sardis bothers to cross-check it. Still, it's tradition, and traditions keep. Couriers sail on roads that stretch farther than memory itself. As you refill your provisions, the boy chatters about the last rider who passed through, a courier who boasted about crossing the Zagros range in record time. You smile politely, but mentally roll your eyes. Couriers are known for stretching the truth as much as they stretch their legs. Historians still argue whether these speed records were ever formally kept, or if they were merely the boasts of men desperate to earn an extra strip of salted fish. At the next tavern, you leave the boy to his tales, stepping back onto the trail where the land flattens into vast stretches of grassland. The wind picks up here, carrying the scent of wild thyme and distant rain. It tugs at your cloak, whispering promises of easier miles ahead. You almost believe it. As the day grows long, you spot a small village off to the left, a cluster of homes huddled against a hill, their walls streaked with colorful dyes. You know this place by reputation. The villagers here are famed for weaving the softest wool in the region, wool so prized it sometimes finds its way to the emperor's own robes. You briefly entertain the fantasy of trading for a small blanket, imagining the luxury of real softness against your calloused skin. But you resist. You cannot afford delays. The message you carry is not urgent, at least not by the Empire's usual standards. But a courier who lingers too long often finds themselves reassigned to less glamorous routes. Or worse, stuck delivering tax notices to rebellious provinces. Instead, you observe the villagers from afar, noting their quiet rhythm. Children chasing goats, women dyeing cloth in vats of indigo, old men nodding over cups of barley beer. You wonder what it must feel like to wake up in the same bed every morning, to know your neighbors' names without needing to check a roster. You shake the thought loose. Comfort is for other people. You cross paths with a merchant caravan in the afternoon. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a beard so meticulously oiled it gleams in the sun, offers you a spot at their evening camp. He even tempts you with the smell of roasted chickpeas and sweet figs. But you decline politely, explaining that couriers are bound to their solitary discipline. The man laughs, clapping you on the back with enough force to jostle your teeth. "Suit yourself, Ghost Rider," he says, using the nickname caravanners have for couriers who slip past their wagons like shadows. You continue alone, though the scent of their campfire will haunt your nostrils long into the night. As dusk falls, the grasslands yield to scrubby forest, where the trees grow low and gnarled, their twisted branches forming eerie silhouettes against the dying sky. Here the road is less certain, swallowed in places by roots and wandering animal trails. You've heard tales of bandits preying on travelers in these woods, but you push them from your mind. The truth is, most highwaymen have more sense than to attack a royal courier. The pouch at your side may contain only parchment, but it might as well be armor, backed by the Empire's wrath. Still, you keep one hand close to your dagger. Old habits. You set up camp on a small rise, lighting your fire low to avoid attracting attention. The night is cooler now, the wind threading through the trees like the breath of ancient spirits. As you settle into your blanket, you allow your thoughts to drift to home. Not your birthplace. You gave up on hometown loyalties long ago, but to Susa itself, the glittering heart of the Empire. You picture the towering columns of the Apadana, the scent of spiced stews from the street vendors, the endless chatter of languages from every corner of the known world. You wonder briefly if the message you carry will ever make it back to the capital, if anyone will ever know the lengths you went to deliver it. Probably not. Couriers rarely earn their place in the grand histories. They are the invisible veins of the empire, pumping messages, orders, and secrets from one end to the other without fanfare. Still, in the quiet of the night, you tell yourself that's enough. You are part of something bigger, even if your name is never carved into stone. A rustle in the underbrush pulls you from your thoughts. You tense, heart pounding, but it's only a porcupine, shuffling through the leaves in search of fallen fruit. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding, chuckling softly at your own paranoia. You really need a hobby, you mutter to yourself. And with that, you let the crackling of your small fire lull you into uneasy sleep, the stars peeking through the branches like curious eyes. When you awaken, the porcupine is long gone, leaving only faint tracks in the soft earth, and the forest feels quieter than it did last night, as if the trees themselves are holding their breath. You stretch stiffly, shaking the leaves from your blanket, and rub the ache from your calves. The life of a courier is a study in enduring discomfort, blisters, strained muscles, and a relentless thirst that water never quite satisfies. You know today's leg of the journey will test that endurance more than most. The trail ahead crosses an old hunting ground, a place where few travelers linger, even though it's the shortest route to the next station. You've heard whispers of wolves prowling these woods, though you suspect the tales are more superstition than fact. Wolves are practical creatures. They know the taste of human flesh invites retaliation. Still, you keep your senses sharp. Even if the wolves are more fable than fact, there are always other predators lurking in the Empire's forgotten corners. By midday, you emerge from the forest into an expanse of cracked, dusty plain, once fertile farmland, or so the older couriers claim. Historians still argue whether the land was abandoned due to climate shifts, over-farming, or perhaps the slow, grinding decay of an empire spreading itself too thin. Whatever the cause, the result is the same: a lonely sea of scrub and forgotten burrows. You march forward, boots crunching over brittle remnants of ancient irrigation ditches now home, only to stubborn weeds. Occasionally, you pass a crumbling wall, its bricks worn smooth by time and sand. Each relic whispers of a civilization that grew too ambitious, stretched its arms too wide, and paid the price. It's not the most uplifting thought to carry on. A day's walk, but you've learned to find comfort in these ruins. They remind you that no empire, no matter how grand, is eternal. Even the Persian kings wrapped in silk and gold will one day fade into stories and dust. You too will be forgotten. But perhaps that's a kind of freedom. The path leads you to a battered milestone, half sunken in the earth, its once proud inscriptions weathered into obscurity. You trace your fingers over the faint outline of the Empire's emblem, a winged figure still clinging to the stone like a ghost refusing to let go. A scrap of cloth flutters from the milestone's base, tied there by another courier as a message. Crude but effective code signaling that the path ahead is clear. No soldiers, no raids. You grin at the thought of your fellow riders, bound by the same code, the same stubborn heartbeat that propels them across hostile lands. A few miles beyond the milestone, you spot the shimmer of a distant caravan. The merchants are traveling, the safer southern route, their wagons heavy with dyes, spices, and, if the rumors are true, the Empire's latest obsession, a rare breed of tiny, elaborately feathered chickens from the far reaches of India. Apparently, they're all the rage at court. You wonder if the Emperor's palace floors are now littered with these absurd creatures, strutting through the corridors like they own the place. You snort softly at the mental image and press on. The sun climbs mercilessly, the plain offering no shade, no refuge. You wrap your scarf tighter around your face, leaving only a slit for your eyes, a technique borrowed from the desert tribes. You once laughed at their layers upon layers of cloth, But you learned quickly that wisdom often wears strange clothing. By late afternoon, you spot the next station on the horizon, a low stone building squatting beside a narrow, algae-choked stream. It's not the most inviting sight, but to your weary legs, it looks like a palace. The station master greets you with a grunt, barely looking up from his ledger. He's an older man, his skin like leather, his hair the color of old parchment. You hand over your pouch for inspection. Standard procedure, though you both know he's more interested in gossip than the contents of your message. You trade pleasantries over bowls of lentil stew, spiced with something that makes your tongue tingle in a way you can't decide is pleasant or mildly alarming. The station master speaks of recent troop movements, merchants grumbling about new tariffs, and of course the endless rivalry between the cities of Susa and Sardis. Always bickering like spoiled children, he says, shaking his head. Meanwhile, we're the ones keeping their letters from rotting in sacks. You nod. It's an old complaint, but a true one. As the sun sinks toward the horizon, you refill your supplies, bread, water, a handful of dried figs, and prepare to set out once more. The station master raises an eyebrow. You sure you want to push? On tonight? Wolves have been restless lately. Or so the caravans say, you shrug. Caravans always say something. You've yet to see a wolf that looked at a courier and thought, yes, that's tonight's feast. Still, you can't shake the chill that creeps along your spine as you leave the station behind. The plain now painted in the bruised purples and oranges of twilight. The wind whistles through the empty fields, carrying with it sounds you can't quite place. Snatches of distant birdsong, the rustle of unseen creatures, the eerie hum of the Empire's forgotten heart. You walk on, your footsteps steady, even, as darkness coils around you. The stars bloom above, sharp and cold, and you trace the familiar patterns, the bow of Arash the Archer, the long line of the King's Road stretching from one end of the sky to the other. You imagine the ancient astronomers drawing those patterns on parchment, debating whether the heavens favor this king or that. Historians still argue over how accurate those maps truly were, but accuracy is beside the point. It's the stories that endure, not the measurements. You keep moving, your body now operating on muscle memory alone. The road stretches ahead, as endless as the stars, and for now, that's enough. Your boots wear down the last stretch of scrubland as the darkness deepens into a velvet black. Out here, with only the thin crescent moon as company, the world feels eerily hollow, as though you're walking through a stage set after the play has ended. Every rustle sounds exaggerated. Every shadow stretches impossibly long. You keep your breathing steady, your pace deliberate. You know the tricks the mind can play on a lone traveler at night. You've heard the older couriers whisper of men losing themselves to desert mirages or worse, to their own thoughts. And yet, despite your seasoned calm, you start to hear it, the faint patter of footsteps behind you. You glance over your shoulder. Nothing. But the sound lingers at the edge of hearing, matching your pace just a heartbeat behind. You resist the urge to run. Running only feeds the paranoia. And besides, you know from bitter experience that shadows tire slower than you do. Instead, you pause at the top of a low ridge, scanning the darkness. Again, nothing. Historians still argue whether the stories of the ghost runners, spectral couriers who failed their route and are doomed to chase the living, are rooted in old fears or deliberate empire propaganda designed to keep riders obedient. Whatever the origin, you know the tale well. Tonight, you wonder if you're starring in it. You shake the thought loose, probably just your own steps echoing back from the low hills. Still, you decide to quicken your pace. Even couriers are allowed a touch of superstition when the night presses in like this. By the time the sky begins to pale at the edges, you spy the thin line of the royal road snaking over the hills ahead, its gravel reflecting the first tentative rays of dawn. The mere sight fills you with a jolt of relief, as if the Empire itself is welcoming you back from some borderland of dreams and delusions. At a way station carved into a hillside, you collapse onto a stone bench, gulping water greedily. The station keeper A wiry woman with the expression of someone who's seen far too many sunrises alone, barely nods as she records your arrival. You can't help but notice the stack of undelivered messages piling up in her office. Supply caravans are late, she says flatly, as if reading your thoughts. No one's got time for letters these days. You know the feeling. Still, you ask if she's heard any recent news. She leans in, lowering her voice even though there's no one else around. They say a rebellion's brewing in the far west. Tax collectors gone missing. Whole villages refusing to pay tribute. She shrugs. Not that it's our problem. We just carry the words. That is, after all, the courier's eternal creed. The message is yours to carry, not to question. But as you sip your bitter tea, you wonder what it must feel like to be the one sending those words, shaping the Empire's commands, dictating. Destinies from behind a silk screen. Probably a lot more comfortable, you think. You depart the station after a short rest, your legs heavy but your mind oddly light. Maybe it's the tea. Maybe it's the absurdity of life itself. You find yourself humming an old marching song, something you picked up from a troop escort years ago. The lyrics make little sense, half nonsense about singing camels and moonlit chickens, but they beat back the creeping silence. The day wears on, the sun punishing as ever. You spot a group of locals tending to an irrigation canal, their hands rough, their faces smeared with mud. They pause only briefly to glance at you, curiosity mingling with indifference. You wonder how many of them even know the empire they serve stretches thousands of miles beyond their fields. Or if they care, probably not. Your path veers through a narrow canyon by afternoon, the walls pressing in close enough to make you feel like a bead sliding down a string. The air is cooler here, trapped in the shadows, and the scent of damp stone fills your nostrils. A welcome change from dust. But canyons like this are notorious hiding spots for the less savory sorts of men. Brigands, deserters, or desperate. Farmers turned highwaymen. You keep your hand near your dagger again, though you know it's more for your peace of mind than practical defense. Your best weapon is still the Empire's insignia hanging from your belt. By sheer chance, or perhaps blind luck, you make it through the canyon without incident, emerging into a plateau where the royal road stretches wide and proud, its ancient stonework still visible beneath the dirt in places. The sight stirs something in you, a flicker of pride maybe, or at least a grudging respect for the stubborn architects who laid this path centuries ago. The Empire may rise and fall, but the road endures. As the sun dips low once more, you find yourself camped near an old caravanserai, now abandoned. The walls still stand, though the roof has surrendered to the years. You claim a corner, for yourself, lighting a small, smokeless fire. Tonight you indulge in the last of your figs, savoring the sweetness like it's the finest delicacy in the Empire. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed, and your boots feel more like wooden blocks than leather, but your spirits are oddly high. Maybe it's the satisfaction of nearing the end of this leg of the journey, or maybe it's the soft laughter of the ghost runners on the wind, reminding you that you're still among the living. Either way, you lean back against the crumbling stone, gaze at the stars, and let the night wrap you in its cool, quiet embrace. You drift to sleep with the words of the Empire tucked close to your chest, their ink pressing faint outlines against your skin. You wake before sunrise, as you always do on the road. Even in sleep, your body seems to know its duties, prodding you awake with the creaks and groans of overworked muscles. The stars are still clinging to the sky, but the eastern horizon glows, faintly, promising another day of heat, dust, and endless steps. You pack quickly, your hands moving through familiar motions without thought. Water pouch refilled, scarf wrapped, messages checked, dagger sheathed. You've done this routine so many times now you could probably prepare in your sleep, and on some days you suspect you have. Today's stretch will be easier, at least in theory. You're approaching the more civilized heart of the Empire now. Towns and villages dot the road, bringing with them comforts like shade, fresh bread, and, if you're lucky, dates sweet enough to make you forget the endless flatness of the terrain. But civilized is always relative. The first village you encounter has the sleepy, suspicious air of a place used to being passed by. The market is little more than a few tired stalls selling dried lentils and pottery so crude, even the station masters wouldn't bother stealing it. A cluster of children follow you at a distance, giggling behind their hands at your dusty robes and the insignia swinging from your belt. You let them laugh. It's a sound you've missed. One brave boy approaches, holding out a wilted sprig of mint as if offering tribute to some wandering god. You accept it with mock solemnity, tucking it into your scarf where its sharp scent cuts through the sour smell of your sweat-soaked tunic. You leave the village behind, but the laughter and mint stay with you. A small reminder that even the dullest corners of the empire have their charms. By mid-morning, you fall into stride with a postal patrol, a rare luxury. The soldiers ride ponies, their armor dented and dusty, their moods sullen from too many nights on the road. But they offer protection and, more importantly, company. They grumble about everything. The heat, their pay, the Empire's obsession with silk, and, of course, the endless letters that seem to breed faster than rats. You'd think the king would run out of things to say eventually, one soldier mutters. You chuckle. The king's words weigh less than the dust in our boots, but they still expect us to carry them. The soldier snorts his agreement, then offers you a swig from his canteen. The liquid burns your throat, date wine strong enough to make your ears tingle, but it warms you in a way the sun never could. Historians still debate the precise logistics of the Persian postal system. Some argue it was the most advanced of its time, rivaling the later Roman networks in speed and efficiency. Others claim it was patchwork at best, held together by stubborn men like you and half-starved ponies. The truth, as always, probably, lies somewhere between. You part ways with the patrol by noon, your route veering into a stretch of hilly terrain dotted with olive groves. The scent of crushed leaves and ripening fruit hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the buzz of bees. You savor these pockets of calm when they appear, though they never last. At one grove, you stumble upon an old man tending his trees, his back bent nearly double, his face a maze of wrinkles. You look like you've walked from the ends of the earth, he says, eyeing you. Feels like it, you reply. He offers you a gnarled olive, bitter and briny, but you accept it anyway. It's rude to refuse, and besides, your body craves the salt. Watch your step up ahead, the old man warns. Roads washed out near the pass. Been some heavy rains. You thank him, though you curse under your breath. Detours mean lost time, sore legs, and a longer stretch between meals. Still, you adjust your route accordingly. No point fighting the land itself. The Empire may claim dominion over all its surveys, but nature still writes the rules out here. The detour takes you through a narrow gorge, the rock still slick with the memory of recent floods. Water trickles down the walls, carrying with it small cascades of mud and pebbles. The path is treacherous, but at least the coolness of the gorge offers respite from the relentless sun. You pause halfway through to inspect a peculiar carving. On the canyon wall, an ancient relief depicting a king astride a monstrous bird. You've seen enough imperial propaganda to recognize the absurd scale of the creature. No doubt it once served to warn travelers of the Empire's divine might. But the bird's head is chipped away, the king's figure faded to a mere silhouette. You can't help but smile. Even gods fade. You emerge from the gorge in the late afternoon, shoes caked in mud, your legs heavy with exhaustion. But ahead, like a beacon, stands the last station before your final stretch. A sprawling post house nestled beside a glittering river. The post house is larger than most, boasting a small market, stables, and even a bathhouse. You allow yourself the luxury of a proper wash, scrubbing away days of grit and grime until your skin stings. You linger in the hot water longer than you should, letting the steam lull you into a foggy stupor. The station master, a severe-looking woman with an impressive collection of facial scars, inspects your messages with military precision, nodding curtly at each seal. You've made good time, she says, sounding almost impressed. You accept the compliment with a weary smile. There are few things more satisfying to a courier than acknowledgement from someone who understands the road's demands. As night falls, you sit by the river, gnawing on flatbread and dates, watching the water catch the starlight like 1,000 molten coins. You're close now. The final leg looms ahead, and though your body protests, your mind itches to finish. There's a particular itch that comes when the end of a route is near, a mixture of impatience, relief, and the bitter knowledge that another route waits. Just beyond the next horizon, you toss a pebble into the river, watching the ripples spread outward, never ending, just like the Empire's reach, just like your footsteps. You rise with the first birdsong, the river's soft murmur like a lullaby you never quite got to finish. The station is already bustling at this early hour, merchants unloading baskets of olives, letters changing hands, horses being brushed, down by sleepy-eyed grooms. Your body groans in protest as you pull on your boots once more, the leather stiff with dried sweat in yesterday's mud. But your legs remember the rhythm now. They fall into the familiar cadence as you step onto the final stretch of the Royal Road. It's a wide, gleaming ribbon here, meticulously maintained near the Empire's seat. The stones are tightly packed, the milestones freshly painted. You almost miss the rough, unpredictable tracks of the hinterlands. This perfection feels artificial, as though the Empire has swept all its messiness under a grand, polished rug. Along the roadside, farmers already labor in the fields, their silhouettes bent over rows of barley and chickpeas. You pass them by, nodding politely, though few look up. Here, the road is just a backdrop, a piece of imperial theater they've long learned to ignore. As the sun climbs, you pass caravans hauling lapis from the east and cedar from the far western mountains. You overhear scraps of conversation in tongues you barely recognize, a reminder of the Empire's vastness. You carry its words, but even you can't keep up with all its voices. One merchant tries to sell you a delicate clay charm, painted with the goddess of safe travels. You consider it, amused at the irony. You, the road's worn-down servant, clutching a trinket for protection, you buy it anyway. Historians still debate how much of the Persian Couriers' success was built on skill versus superstition. The answer, you suspect, is both. By midday, the towers of the city pierce the horizon like jagged teeth. The air hums with the buzz of distant markets and the tang of spices. You smell saffron, sweat, and roasting lamb all mingled into a heady, dizzying cocktail. You pick up your pace despite the weariness anchoring your bones. The city always does this to you, pulling you forward, luring you in like a lover you can't quite trust. You cross the bridge into the heart of the capital, the river gleaming like molten gold beneath your feet. The city walls rise high and defiant, their mosaics catching the sunlight, blinding in their glory. Soldiers watch you from the parapets, but they barely blink at yet another courier staggering into town. Inside, the streets swarm with color and noise, merchants hawking silk from Sogdiana, ivory from Kush, and bitter wine from Anatolia. You dodge ox carts and beggars, skirting processions of priests chanting praises to the king's divine shadow. Your destination is the Palace of Scrolls, a labyrinth of courtyards and towers where the Empire's scribes and archivists labor, endlessly to record every decree, every alliance, every punishment. You reach the gate, your insignia earning you a grudging nod from the bored guards. Inside, the cool hush of the palace is a balm against the city's chaos. The air smells of ink and parchment, of candle smoke and old leather. You deliver the sealed packets into the hands of a senior clerk, a man so pale and stooped, he looks like he's been living in the archive tunnels for decades. From the eastern provinces, you murmur, your voice rasping. He examines the seals without looking at you, stacking the letters on an already teetering pile. That'll do, courier. You'll be logged. And just like that, the burden is off your back. The messages you've risked life, limb, and sanity to deliver are now just another stack of parchment in an empire drowning in its own words. You should feel relieved. Instead, you feel oddly hollow. Still, the road's done with you. For now. You wander outside, into a side alley where a small tea stall beckons. You collapse onto a worn cushion, letting the steam of your cup fog your aching face. The tea vendor eyes you knowingly. Long road? Always, you reply. You sip slowly, letting the bitter brew seep into your bones, washing away the dust of 1,000 miles. The city bustles around you, oblivious to your exhaustion, your stories, your small victories against time and distance. You sit a while longer, breathing in the mix of incense and frying onions, the voices of a dozen languages flowing past like a lazy river. You've made it. Until the next message, until the next road, until the next weary trudge through sand, storm, and superstition. But for now, you close your eyes. Let the tea work its magic. Let the road rest beneath your feet. Word count. 1097, 300 word. Wind down, and as the dust settles, and the last footsteps of the courier fade into the soft hush of the city's alleyways, you find yourself sinking deeper into the folds of the night. The clatter of the marketplace, the chime of bronze bells, even the distant hum of caravan songs, all drift further and further away, dissolving into a gentle, velvety quiet. The road has run its course for now, its stones still warm beneath your tired feet, but the world slows to an easy sway, like the gentle rock of a boat upon a calm sea. You let your breath fall into rhythm with that sway, each inhale a little softer, each exhale a little longer. Your body grows heavy, as though the sands of all the empires have settled upon your limbs, grounding you, anchoring you in this peaceful stillness. The stars above glitter like ancient ink spilled across parchment, their glow soft and endless, guiding you into a realm where no couriers hurry, no scrolls demand attention, and no steps need to be counted. You feel the weight of the road lifting, the miles slipping off your shoulders like a well-worn cloak. There's nothing more to deliver tonight, no messages left to carry, only the quiet hum of your own heart, steady and patient, like the distant drums of an unseen caravan. So let your breath drift deeper, let your eyes grow heavier, let the soft sounds of the ancient empire cradle you into sleep. The road will still be there in the morning, but for now you rest. For now you